In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 8 strategies that sort of stack in order. They get more practical and tangible as we go on. The things you need to think about in order to price your group program effectively so you make money, but also people are happy to pay and the energy exchange feels right. So, just a little bit of my background on this is I mainly specialize in higher ticket programs, getting to the point where we can charge thousands for our services because we need our business to be sustainable, right? And that means we do have a minimum that we need to make to sustain our business. So, the first point I want to make is that people pay more for experts, they pay more for specialists. So, if you run a generic program like a community therapy group, like a community program or a discussion group of some type, this is going to typically be a lower priced program. It's generic, it might be very valuable, but it's not solving a specialist bleeding neck problem. So the first point is the more specialist you become, the more of an expert you become, the more people will pay. An example of this is a specialist like cardiologist. Like you can see a doctor who might do lots of things, and then you could see a specialist and they're going to charge a lot more. So the second thing then we need to consider from a broader context is that we actually need to be selling them what they want. And people often make this mistake in their messaging. They come to me and they say, I'm struggling to sell this thing. I think it might be too expensive. And they think their price is the issue, but it's actually their message, which is the issue. Now, what I mean by this is we need to sell them what they want and give them what they need. And you may have heard multiple people say this expression because it articulates it so nicely. For example, people don't necessarily wake up every day and think, oh, I need self acceptance. I need to love myself. I need self compassion. They might lie awake at night thinking, I wish I had a better relationship, or my relationship is falling apart, or I want to find a partner, or I wish I had a better relationship with my child. Now, you need to position your offer around the thing that your clients desire the most. And that's going to be a tangible thing that is being affected in their lives. As in, if you were watching them, you would be able to see how this problem was playing out. Now, the answer to all of those might be that they need self acceptance, but you need to frame and position your program to the outward problem, and you need to choose one problem and become the specialist in solving that problem. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people because they might feel like the expert in self acceptance, but they might not feel like the expert in helping people have a better relationship with their partner or finding a partner. And so there's often this uncomfortable middle that we have to grow into where we realize that we're in the job of solving problems. We're not in the job of giving them the underlying need because they don't necessarily know that they need it right now. And they're more interested in their day to day problems. Okay. So number one was be the specialist. Number two is sell them what they want and give them what they need. Number three, and this is the main thing about pricing, is people buy the value. You are selling the transformation, not the time, not the number of one-on-one sessions they get, not the number of group sessions they get, not even the length. And people get a little bit confused on this. Clients are paying for results, and the price of your program in its simplest form is what people would pay for that result. And what people would pay depends on how painful the problem is now. If you are selling a nice to have solution and solving a problem that's not that painful, people aren't willing to pay that much to get out of it because they're not in a lot of pain. Whereas if you're selling something that solves a bleeding neck problem, which is a problem that has to be solved now, then suddenly the price point goes up. Compare, for example, a relaxation massage. Very valuable. We might love it, but we might not book it all the time because maybe it's 50 quid and actually I'm okay this month, so I'm not going to book it. Compare that to you having a severe pain in your tooth. You need to solve this now. So you're going to pay way, way more for a dentist to solve that because the demand is there, because the pain is so great and because you want to remove that pain. So you need to position your service to solving a bleeding neck problem. And if you don't, you need to accept that your price is probably going to be lower. Okay. Strategy 4, and this is probably the most tangible, practical thing you could do and that I would recommend, is figure out your price range from imposter price to wildest dreams price. Now, by identifying these two extremes, we know that your pricing is going to fall somewhere in the middle of these two. So your imposter price is the minimum you would charge and not feel resentful. Like you could serve clients at this price point and you wouldn't like resent getting on every group call or every one-on-one call and say, like, so that's your imposter price could also be the minimum amount you need to earn to make a living, which is going to be one of my later points. Your wildest dreams price was like, if I was exactly where I wanted to be with my confidence and self-worth and all of that stuff, exactly where I wanted to be, what would I love to be charging? What would be the figure that I would just be so happy if people paid me that? That's your wildest dreams price. Now, if you don't know these two, you can use industry benchmarks to look at this. So go look at a range of people in your industry. What's the minimum people charging and what's the maximum people charging? Now, I'm not saying you can't break the ceiling of the maximum, but often if you're unsure on your pricing, this is a really good place to start. When you have that range, you then begin to realize this is less about price and more about confidence. Say you're a therapist and you can see some people charging £30 an hour and some people charging £500 an hour. What's the difference between those two groups? My bet is the person that charges £500 an hour has become a specialist, or they've become so in demand, even as a generalist, they've been able to put their price up. That's one thing. The other thing is their confidence. And the truth is, we have to some extent, price to where our confidence level is now and eke our prices up. Because if you don't, when you have a sales conversation with someone and you doubt it, they're going to feel that. Energetically, they are going to feel that doubt. So when I first started, I charged at where I was confident, and I actually kept my packages shorter as well because I knew if I double the length of the package, I'd have to basically double the length of the service. So I just kept it to a 3-month rather than a 6-month package because confidently I could say that price. And as I got more confident serving clients at that range, I put that price. So establish your benchmark of imposter syndrome to wildest dreams. Go somewhere in the middle and then put it up a little bit until you feel a bit sick. That's my benchmark. You want it to be a little bit of a comfort zone stretch, but you don't want it to feel so uncomfortable that you can't confidently say that price on a call. Okay. Strategy 5 is to consider access to you and the intensity of the partnership. So I'm not saying that pricing should always be access to you. And particularly when you reach a certain level in a company, I think this stops being true. But I think for most of us who are watching this video, access to you is important. Like people buy into me and they want access to me. My group program is predominantly me, and that's what people want. Now, you can look at how intensive your programs are. If you have a very intense 6-week program where you meet twice a week for 6 weeks, that might be quite a high price point compared to a 6-month program where you meet once a month, for example. So consider how quickly you are able to deliver a result. If you're able to deliver the same result to a group in 1 day in an intensive environment that you could deliver to someone in 6 months in a less intense environment, it doesn't stand to reason that the 1 day should be cheaper just because it's a shorter amount of time. They actually get a better deal because they get the result faster. So this comes back to the transformation and why you should price based on transformation, not just on length or number of calls, although that's obviously a helpful measure. The other thing to consider, like I mentioned, the intensity. My group program, for example, is quite intense. We have 2 calls a week that people can attend. We have a copy coach. We have a Facebook ads coach. There's unlimited one-on-one with me. So my group container is a high touch container compared to my one-on-one, which is 2 calls a month. Arguably, within my group container, you get a lot more support from different people within that container. So the price point isn't wildly different than my one-on-one, although my one-on-one is more, and I'm going to chat about that in a minute. So strategy 6, you need to consider where you want to position yourself in the market, your brand positioning. Do you want to be known as the most affordable brand, you can't beat this kind of price thing? Or do you want to be considered a more premium brand? Like Gemma's a specialist. She solves this problem really well. People pay to work with her and they pay a premium price because she's so good at what she does. And when you consider where you want to position yourself, and I've had clients say both. I've had some say to me that I just want to focus on accessibility and affordability. And others say, I want to be considered up there with the best brands. Are you an Aldi or are you a Waitrose? And there's no judgment. with whichever you are. But when you think about that, you then can think about, okay, where would my pricing need to sit to align me with peers in that circle? And then how would I need to uplevel my authority online, my professional brand, and also the proof and case studies you have around that's probably the most important one to support the positioning that you have online. Strategy 7 is to actually consider your income goals as a whole. So, a good way to do this is thinking about the minimum you need to have a viable and sustainable business. And that's really important because if you don't have a viable, sustainable business, you will end up going out of business. So, you're going to have a minimum, then you might have a good, and then you might have a stretch. This would be awesome. So, consider your services as a whole. If you've got a group program, if you've got a one on one, if you've got any low ticket offers, and divide up, okay, so how many one on one clients, and look at your calendar as well, at how many people you can serve and do the math. So I know within my business, I can only work with 2 one on one clients at any one time. Most of my energy goes into my group program. And I know how many clients I can have in my group program. Max is 40. And that's getting a bit too much for me before I start to feel really overwhelmed and lose touch with the people in there. So I know I can have 30 to 40 group program clients at one time, 2 one on one clients. And then there's a few other things I do, paid workshops or a one off program I run with a coach that add to my income as well. So build a picture of what your overall income looks like and break that down to how many clients you have. And then put in the figures. So what would your pricing need to be to get your minimum, your good, and your excellent? And that's going to give you a steer as well for where your pricing should sit. Now, my final point on this, strategy number 8, is offer congruence. There needs to be a strong narrative for how your pricing goes up. So say your group program was £3,000 and it's 6 months long, but then your one-on-one is £2,000 and it's 4 months long. That then puts this kind of uneasiness in my head because I'm like, okay, the group's more expensive, but it's longer, and one-on-one's cheaper, but it's shorter. But one-on-one, I get more access to, and it's really personalized. And this doesn't have offer congruence. So it doesn't really matter the difference between your offers as long as there's a strong narrative that's pretty obvious to the people looking at your offers. So for mine, it might be right. My entry level offer is £2,000. And the next step up from that is £4,000. And then if you want to work with me one on one, it's £7,000. And you can see how that goes. The higher you go up my ladder, the more access you get to me. But importantly, the more personalization you get from me as well. The more it's me doing it with you rather than in a group coaching container where I might be doing it alongside you, but also others implementing the same thing as well. And there's going to be different ideal clients attracted to those different price points as well. Ultimately, pricing hugely comes down to confidence. So this is very much about you thinking about where you want to position yourself and then building up the trust and the credibility around your price. And as you work with more people in your group program and as it grows, you will start to hit that resentment point where you're like, hold on a minute, they are getting so much for this price. And then you'll be able to confidently put it up. If you've enjoyed this live, if you enjoyed the tips today, let me know in the comments which one stood out for you.